there is not a lot of hype or discussion about humans going back to the moon, which at the time of recording this is like potentially in a week. You know, I keep seeing these posts. They're all kind of actually written the same, which is people will say humans are going back to the moon in 1 week and nobody is talking about it. What's going on? So first of all, my rebuttal to that is I think people are actually talking about it. Like, it's not, you know, some obscure thing. But I do know 2 years ago, we sent a ship around the moon, the same circuit that NASA is sending the astronauts on around this time. And that was successful. Again, nobody really talked about it. The hype was quite diminished, but I always kind of knew and was aware that humans were going back to the moon sooner than later. I didn't actually realize it was this soon until, you know, maybe 6 months or so ago, this past summer, I start really going into it and looking up the details of it. Now, of course, the rebuttal is that, well, humans aren't actually going to the moon this time. That's what, you know, there's this funny meme. It's like the moon is here and Earth is here, and the astronauts on the spaceship are going around the moon, and it's like random Twitter user on Earth, and their quote, you know, humans aren't actually landing on the moon. But then you see like, well, you're over here, you're around the moon, you're pretty much there. I don't know, it's just, it is a silly sort of thing to make a critique of, well, you're not actually landing on the moon, who cares? It's like, okay, you go on this journey then and tell me that you feel shitty for it. Of course, it's just like the Apollo missions. It's like, you know, you do this one first, then you do the next one, then you do the next one. You build up towards longer term missions there, spending more time there, actually landing there, etc. So this mission goes successful, then the next one, humans will land. So it could be just 1 year in between the two, and that may kickstart a whole lot of moon activity. Now, yeah, again, I think people do really care. There's a lot of people talking about it. My girlfriend and I will be looking at the moon in our quite inadequate telescope. This is pretty good for looking at the moon, but not much else. It's a cheap one anyways. We plan to build out our telescope repertoire across time because amateur astronomy is fun and space is really cool. And my girlfriend has quite the reverence for space, which I think is one of the coolest things about her. And it's taught me a lot. And that's something that modern day humans have really lost with light pollution, and not only that, just not caring to go look at the stars, right? There's a whole lot more interesting things to look down at instead of looking up at. Now, a funny reality about this is that humans are going back to the moon at a time when AI deepfakes are at an all-time greatness level. So easy to make something look so real while being so fake. So for anyone who is a moon landing denier, now you have all the opportunity to say, ha, that's fake. That's AI generated. Not real. So the more high quality of footage they get, the more it will be distrusted. What a horrible conundrum. Well, guess what? You don't need to believe in it. I don't think every single person in the whole world needs to actually be grounded in objective reality. I think it's actually quite fine to have a division. You know, I'm not even that concerned personally about misinformation, disinformation, whatever, man. There's going to be different views. What I am concerned about is ideological divides, okay? When you have wars, which we have today, when you have growing dissatisfaction on a political spectrum, which we have today, right? The different sides of the political spectrum are more distant today than the Earth is from the moon. You know, the distance is growing vaster and vaster in between us. So the question with that then is, do we actually have an overpopulation problem on Earth. And I, for one, do not believe that we actually have a legitimate overpopulation problem. And this is me coming from an environmentalist, conservationist point of view. I've looked at both sides of it, and I think Earth can sustain large populations of humans, more than 8 billion, I do believe. We waste more food than we consume, or we waste more than we need today. So the problem is not growing food, it's about using what we have. The problem is not so much pollution, the problem is managing, our waste products better. And we'll have solutions that we continue to build out. But I do believe that our ideas are too big for this planet. And that it seems like it is very unrealistic to have a world peace. And I've talked about this before, but if you cannot then maintain peace across nations, and if you have nations that hold the power to destroy and obliterate everything on Earth, and if you have a mutually assured destruction with nuclear weapon arsenal, then we're screwed. At some point, something is going to go wrong. The arsenal will be unleashed. We're all dead. There goes humanity. It doesn't matter if we have a base on the moon. It doesn't matter if we have a population living on Mars. That doesn't really get us anywhere. So perhaps the reason no one is talking about the fact that we're going back to the moon, again, a lot of people are actually talking about it. It's just there are a lot of other things to talk about and discuss. The reason, hang on a second here. Okay, some water and to collect my thoughts. Perhaps some people, again, either, I think there is actually bad information channels. The first Apollo landing on the moon, people watched it in schools. Everyone remembers where they were in 1969. And it was monumental. Today, there are many different things going on, and we don't all have one, stream of media towards ourselves. I don't even know if we're talking about it or not, because I don't know at all what the news channels talk about. I just don't pay attention. I know what the channels on X might talk about or YouTube, but I'm also very biased in, the people that I follow. But I can imagine that not a lot of people are talking about this or comprehending it, and it's probably because they just don't care. And I think life has never been more of a struggle just to live in the day-to-day. And if people are struggling and dealing with things locally, it's hard to care about things not only globally, but on another celestial body. Another potential is that people may be realizing that it really doesn't matter to our quality of life what we do on the moon. Yeah, I think most people believe that humans have gone to the moon. I think the people that don't believe have reason to be skeptical. It's like janky footage and whatever else going on with that. But I also think those people that don't believe haven't actually watched, the previous Apollo missions. There's some really fun footage where they're driving around and going over samples and stuff like that. So I think there's poor information channels that disseminate science of all types to the average everyday person, from molecular science to lunar science. But again, the broader point is that I believe this too. Again, I'm excited that humans are going to the moon, albeit not landing this time, but on the third mission they will, Artemis 3. I'll be following Artemis 2 and excited about it and sharing that experience with my girlfriend and with other people in my life. But I'm also privy to the fact that this pursuit of space exploration from the moon to Mars is pretty irrelevant to my quality of life within the next century of my living. It doesn't really do anything to release the steam, to open up the steam valve for the current issues in the world today and for the next 100 years. This isn't any sort of a thing that will help us for nuclear disarmament. This isn't anything that will allow, like, for example, Israel-Palestine, okay? These are two places that are so locked in with ideological differences that they don't seem to be able to ever be able to coexist with each other in a world, even though their world is the tiniest little dot, the tiniest little speck of land of our entire planet. But yet there is two ideologies that are too big to coexist with each other. And that's a microcosm of the ideological battles in every other part of the world. So maybe Earth is too small for our huge ideas. And maybe we need to expand elsewhere into the cosmos. Well, the moon and Mars are really shitty options, and perhaps the only way forward is space travel in a way that is not as slow as it is currently. In some sort of a way to go into much deeper space, into places with Earth-like planets, places where we could actually live without so many technological interventions, which we would need on the moon and on Mars. Be really tough, difficult, and pretty shitty living on either of those places. And what fun would it be to be there just to watch Earth obliterate itself? And then what do? Continue on the species on Mars, hope to terraform it some millennium? This is a cynical view, but not a nihilistic view, because I think there is a hope out there in the future. And I believe that we can get to that point with serious development in physics, and not something necessarily that will come from my mind, but I want to be somewhere within that world where we are able to find that new physics, new frameworks for what it means to exist within the cosmos. We have a lot of unanswered questions there. That's where we should all be looking. That's what's fun and what's interesting. Right now, it does kind of feel like we're just repeating the 1960s and 70s. Cool. We're repeating something from the 1960s and 70s. Really? I thought we were progressing. I thought there's innovation around every corner. There's new technology, new AI, so many new things. But we're kind of doing Groundhog Day. So I do as well have a cynical view of going back to the moon. I'm excited about it, but also I think there's a whole lot more we can be doing, but I will leave that thought with us to end out this video. And I think that's kind of the only place where we can be at, tying this together with all the other interwoven dynamics. But whenever they do launch, whether it's February 6th or whenever else, I will be looking at the moon just to look. What the heck? You got to be excited about what we do get the opportunity to witness. And that's all I got to say about that.